Welcome to Secure Freedom Radio. This is Frank Gaffney, your host and guide for what I think of as an intelligence briefing on the war for the free world. A woman who has been in the front lines of that war in the United States Congress for a very long time, representing the people of the 27th District of Florida with great distinction, is our first guest. She is Congresswoman Ileana Ros-Lehtinen. She is the Chairman Emeritus of the House Committee on Foreign Affairs and currently serves as the chairman of a very important subcommittee at that committee, the Middle East and North Africa subcommittee. She also serves on the House Rules Committee. She is always a welcome guest here. Ileana, thank you very much for taking the time to join us.
Thank you so much, Frank. It's a delight to be on your program.
Well, the delight is ours, especially because, of course, you are really very much at the forefront of the fight that is coming over this deal President Obama is conjuring up with the Iranians. I say conjuring up because I have the feeling that anything that's real about it is going to be very bad, and a lot of the things that are supposed to be good about it are going to be, figments of our imagination, or at least his. Give us a sense of your view of the agreement as it's shaping up and the advisability of the United States going along with it.
I'm very pessimistic about our ability to get a strong agreement. The only good deal is one in which Iran ceases all enrichment, one in which Iran dismantles its nuclear infrastructure. And Frank, once upon a time, that's what we were going to do. That's the best way to ensure that Iran won't be able to create a nuclear weapon ever. If a deal is signed based on this framework agreement, what does that mean? It's going to allow Iran to keep in place every key element of its nuclear infrastructure. It's going to preserve its stockpiles of enriched uranium. It's going to keep its equipment and research and development program. Not only is this agreement a significant step back from what the UN Security Council and the world powers were demanding from Iran just a few years ago, but it's significantly weaker than even what the president stated a year and a half ago. Remember when he said they don't need to have an underground facility in Fordo? Well, guess what? Fordo remains. Obama said they don't need a heavy water reactor at Arak, A-R-A-K. Well, Iran continues with the capacity to produce and store heavy water. Obama said they don't need some of the advanced centrifuges. Well, guess what? Iran is going to continue to operate and test these centrifuges. And what about their ballistic missile program? It's going to continue and pursue this program unimpeded. That means it's going to be capable of carrying this nuclear structure all across Europe, Israel, the United States. Once upon a time, the president said, oh, yes, Iran is going to must comply with the UN Security Council resolutions. Well, Iran's allowed to ignore past resolutions. It's going to continue uranium enrichment. This deal is so bad. It is worse than what people can imagine.
Yeah, and it's funny, bizarre, I guess is the better way to put it, that the deal which you've described, bad as it was back in April in this sort of framework context, has become even worse in the intervening period, with further concessions having been made in so many different areas. And I guess this brings us to the heart of the matter. Ileana Ros-Lehtinen, you're a member, of course, former chairman of the House Foreign Affairs Committee. What is the view on the Hill at the moment in terms of whether Congress will actually turn down this deal for all the reasons you've mentioned and more?
Well, we need the public support, and I hope that programs like yours, Frank, with the intelligence that you have, with the capability to communicate clearly and in an articulate manner to your listeners what this deal means to them. Why should we care about a weak deal? And you should care very deeply. So we depend on the grassroots to tell us, some of our weaker members, to give them the courage to say no, because what the administration is saying, Obama say, you're either for this deal or you want to go to war. That is a false choice. There are many unanswered questions on this deal. What about the possible military dimension? And the framework agreement has no mention whatsoever about the military facilities. Remember, Rouhani and Khamenei have said, oh, no, you can't inspect any of the military sites. Well, then if you're not going to inspect those sites, I'll give you one guess as to where the cheating will be happening if that becomes part of the deal. And also the signing bonus. We've been hearing these rumors. Is it true that they're going to get $50 billion before Iran even has to comply with anything? This is beyond irresponsible. It's incomprehensible. And I worry
and reckless.
I worry that the sanctions, the only thing settling is that they've settled on is sanctions relief. We're going to lift all sanctions on the day that they sign the deal. It is unbelievable.
Yeah. Well, I guess they're still sort of thrashing around on that, but whatever they are going to do, it's already the case that billions have flowed to them, and the sanctions arrangements are unraveling as we speak. I just want to emphasize a point that you made, Congresswoman. This is clearly a threat to America, not just to our friends in Israel and elsewhere in the Middle East and Europe.
I'm glad that you're pointing that out because people are thinking, oh, this is a problem for our ally, the Democratic Jewish State of Israel. Sure. It's a problem for our U.S. national security interests abroad. Sure. It is a problem for the United States of America. These threats are real, and we've got to make sure that as unpleasant as it is to talk about it, Iran is controlling 4 Arab capitals: Damascus, Baghdad, Beirut, Sana'a. Do they think that this nuclear capability is not going to impact the United States of America? Of course. So this is a problem of our misplaced priorities from this administration, the failed policies in the region over the past few years, and of course it's not our fault. I mean, this is Iran's fault, but that's the world's leading state sponsor of terrorism. Why are we going to give them money and loosen sanctions against the leading state sponsor of terrorism? It's a problem for the United States security.
Yeah, I'm fond of saying, Congresswoman, that this would turn us into the largest state sponsor of terrorism because we would be providing these tens of billions of dollars to the Iranian regime. One other facet of this, of course, is the terrible negotiating tactics or approach, if you want to call it that, of the Obama administration. And it's much in evidence in another context with which you are also very much engaged, and that is the efforts of the Obama administration to normalize relations with the Castro brothers regime in Cuba. What's your reading on how they're doing with those negotiations? And again, the interests of the United States, are they being served by it or not?
Well, it's the same playbook that they've used on Iran. They're using it on Cuba. Concessions to tyrannical regimes, to human rights abusers. This Sunday, one of the leading human rights activists in Cuba, Antonio Rodiles, was beaten to a pulp because he was silently walking to the Catholic Mass in order to call attention to the many political prisoners in Cuba's jails. And while we're negotiating, while we're establishing diplomatic relations, the Cuban thugs, the security forces, are still beating up, hounding, persecuting, and jailing dissidents. So if that's their behavior while we're negotiating, can you imagine once this deal is in place? And again, just like the Iran deal, it's a secret deal. If these deals are so great, both in Iran and Cuba, let's see it. Let's give it to the public to view. Let's find out what the details are. We are, in fact, saying to Castro, you don't have to do one change. You don't have to change at all. We're just going to lift all of these restrictions, and you're going to behave, right? And, of course, he doesn't, but it doesn't matter. It's the same. We're just pleading with them. Will you take a yes? You don't have to change a thing.
Will you allow us to give away the store?
Absolutely, with no concessions whatsoever, neither in Iran nor with Cuba.
I hope that, as with your colleague across the hill, Senator Marco Rubio, Ileana Ros-Lehtinen, that we will be watching, we will be seeing your leadership at work in helping to stymie these steps, both on the Iran deal and on the Cuban effort.
I hope so, Frank, but we need the support of the public, and I hope that your listeners will help us out on that.
I can count on it. We're going to do everything we can for sure, and believe me, the sentiment of the American people, I think, on both of these accounts, and more generally, just the humiliation that the country is being subjected to as a result of this misconduct.
We look so weak. We acquiesce to
appalling.
all the thugs, and we say, hit me again.
It only emboldens them, as you know so well. Ileana Ros-Lehtinen, former chairwoman, great to talk with you. We'll do it again soon. In the meantime, be well. Next up, we'll get another perspective on the folly of the Iran deal with Ken Timmerman, investigative reporter par excellence. Straight ahead.